talking about social mobility, what one advice would you give to any employer who's struggling to recruit diverse talent?
I think it's about widening the net and talking to organisations like yourself, and there are a number of organisations out there that can help with diversity in the workplace. So if they're not, the traditional routes of social media may not work for that community. So it's about tapping into organisations like yourself, Isha, like other social mobility action groups that are out there that have access to those individual learners, those people who need that, and to work with them hold hands with them, not just in a kind of a verbal words, have the action, go out there and actually mobilize. I think that's the important bit of information or bit of advice I'd give, is to be actually proactive about it. And actually words are great, but actually the action's more important. So be part of this journey. And I think that hopefully will help you diversify your workforce and create social mobility, for the nation as a whole.
And let's ask that question to Neil.
I think Raisa mentioned it in her opening comments that the wages for apprenticeships are not that high. Now, for an industry like ours, the visual effects and post-production industry, we're very concentrated in London and the southeast, extremely concentrated in central London. That's one of the most expensive places in the world to live. And so if you are an independent not of independent means, it's a very difficult place for you to establish yourself. So that's one of the reasons why the typical white middle class male that Amy mentioned was the typical recruit. It's because they've got access to the bank of mom and dad. And if you haven't got access to that, then how do you get into the industry if you're, say, outside of London? It's one of the things that we realized when we were running some of the early access VFX events, that actually here are people who are already living in London. They're living very close, they're living at home, and therefore that having to have independent means is not that much of a problem if we can recruit more local people. So I think that's one of the lessons that we've learned.
So before we go on to Amy, if you've got any questions, please put them into the chat box, which is situated, it's a little round circle. Just pop it into there and we'll get them answered by our speakers. If you've got a specific question for a specific speaker, please do mention that and then I can get that across. Amy.
One of the things that I think has really helped us at Framestore specifically bring more diverse young people into our business is participating in the Enterprise Advisor program. So for anyone who's not aware, that's essentially where a business professional from industry is paired up with a local school, and you can choose whether that's local to the office, local to where you live, whatever, but a local school. And you work with their careers lead to help them with their careers program in that school. And there are now thousands of enterprise advisors right across the country, but what that taps you into is that network. So not only do you then have a relationship with an individual school, but actually you become more visible to other schools right across the country. And that has, in terms of the kinds of young people that come into our business to do workshops with us, to do tours, to have presentations, it's completely changed the profile of those young people by being part of that program, because we can now reach out to the entire school community in a way you can't when you're sort of on the outside of education. When you're in the private sector, you don't necessarily know how to establish relationships with education. And so the Enterprise Advisor program for me has been really beneficial in that sense.
And thank you very much for that, Amy. And Raisa.
I think like Viren, Neil and Amy have said as well, a lot of the points that they've brought up I completely agree with. I think the other thing that I'd mention is role models. I've always said you can't be who you can't see. So if you do have those individuals within companies who do stand out and you do want to attract more diverse talent, you need to be using these people and putting them on a pedestal and saying, look, this is what you can be. Because I know that if I saw a brown woman working in a male-dominated, predominantly white environment, I'd look at her and I'd say, you know what, I can do that. Yeah, of course I can. Someone else can do it, so can I. But I didn't have someone like that. And hopefully the work that we do does bring light to other young women who are in the STEM sector, to say, anyone can do this. And I think employers can say that they're diverse and that they're inclusive, but people aren't dumb. You know, you only have to look at an employer's website to see who they've got on there, to see, you know, whether people look like you or you can relate to them in any way. And I think the other thing that's quite important is, of course, making apprenticeships accessible. So around things like wages, or you know, the government needs to do a bit more in terms of helping apprentices with transport costs, and things like prescriptions, and especially for people who have other responsibilities as well.